Around the world, good day to you. Dramatic audio has come to light of Iranian naval vessels closing in on a British-flagged oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. We'll play it for you in a moment, but first I'd like to set it up for you. An Iranian patrol boat tells the tanker that it will be safe if it obeys and changes course. A nearby British warship, though, immediately advises that tanker, in effect, to ignore the Iranians' warnings. Take a look.
You obey, you will be safe. If you obey, you will be safe. Alter your course to 360 degrees immediately. Over.
Stena Impero, this is a British warship Foxtrot 236. So I reiterate that as you are conducting transit passage in a recognised international strait, under international law, your passage must not be impaired, impeded, obstructed or hampered. Please confirm that you are conducting transit passage through the recognised international strait. Over.
Foxtrot 236, this is a Separ Navy patrol boat. No challenge is intended. No challenge is intended. I want to inspect the ship for security reason. Over.
That's the audio, and now our senior international correspondent Matthew Chance is following the story live in Khor Fakkan in the UAE. Good to have you with us, Matthew. First of all, so you've heard the audio yourself. Walk us through it and the implications.
Yeah, a very dramatic exchange, which must have been made in the moments before Iranian forces dramatically boarded that British-flagged oil tanker, surrounding it with fast patrol boats and then descending upon it with armed sort of special forces type individuals from a helicopter that was hovering above the deck and taking control of it. The Iranian Navy in that radio exchange appear to be sort of instructing or ordering the Stena Impero, the British-flagged oil tanker, to change course and saying, you know, if you obey, you will be safe. So in the vicinity, but not close enough to actually physically intervene, was HMS Montrose. That's that warship that you heard identify itself as a British warship. It was instructing the British-flagged oil tanker that it did not have to comply, that it was plying its trade essentially in international waters. The warship even spoke to the Iranian naval patrol and asked them to clarify that they were not trying to illegally act to interfere with a vessel going about its regular legitimate business. And the Iranian naval response was that they just wanted to stop the ship and inspect it for security reasons. Again, that must have been just moments before those Iranian special forces descended onto the deck of the ship and took control of it. And so obviously a very dramatic situation to hear it unfold in audio files in that way. What we're waiting for now, George, is the next steps by the British government. They say they're consulting with their partners and with their allies in the region to discuss, first of all, how to get that ship back and how to protect other shipping in the Persian Gulf region. The British government has been asked about whether it is considering imposing sanctions on Iran, but it's not ruled that out. But it's not ruled them in either, and so it's looking at all of its options at the moment. But clearly, even though the British government say they want this to be resolved diplomatically, it is an incredibly dangerous situation, especially when you set it against the backdrop of rising tensions in the Persian Gulf region between the United States and Iran, and the build-up of military activities between those two countries as well. In that context, you could see how an incident like this could easily spark something much broader, much more violent. George.
Well, let's broaden it there, Matthew. Look, you have other key allies now supporting Great Britain. Does this continue to push Europe further from Iran, closer to the United States, along with the UK?
I think it probably does. It inevitably does. I mean, the United States has been arguing for some time now that Iran is a malign force that needs to be confronted, particularly in this region, but also the broader region as well. Now, ironically, Britain and its European partners have been amongst those voices that have been resisting that. They're still signatories of the Iranian nuclear deal, the deal that the United States unilaterally pulled out of last year. They've been searching for ways to try and keep Iran in the international fold, to try and keep the nuclear deal alive. But obviously that effort will be weakened, and the will to do that will be weakened by the events of the past few days and this sort of confrontation now between the Iranians and the British, and of course the support they're getting from their European allies and others as well, George.
Matthew Chance, live for us in the UAE. Matthew, thanks. We'll stay in touch with you on this. Now let's get a little perspective with Bobby Ghosh. Bobby, an editor with Bloomberg in London. Good to have you with us, Bobby.
Hi, George.
So through its history of acting by way of regional proxies, there's always been a veil of plausible deniability when it comes to Iran. So in this latest who did what and why, is that part of the strategy, would you say, as we see a more assertive Iran?
Well, it's becoming less and less a part of the strategy. Now Iran seems to be willing to identify itself with some of these actions. So in the matter of taking of this tanker, there is no doubt that it was by Iranian authorities. Iranian authorities have owned it, they've claimed it, they've put out videos showing that their own people, the IRGC, did this. So typically Iran does, when Iran is sort of confronting the rest of the world, which honestly is most of the time, it does it through multiple channels. And some are through proxies which carry a bit of plausible deniability. For instance, using the Houthis in Yemen to fire rockets into Saudi Arabia. There was another one of those yesterday, which sort of got lost in all of this news. And on the other side, they sort of use the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, to directly do provocative and confrontational things. So Iran sort of likes to have it both ways, and that's exactly what it's doing right now.
Iran has threatened before to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Whether they could actually do that, well, that's an entirely different question. But how much power does Iran have? How much leverage there when it comes to shipping?
Well, it's a very narrow strait, and a quarter of all of the world's oil movement takes place through that strait. Oil companies and their insurance companies that underwrite this traffic tend to be very skittish. So Iran doesn't really have to do a great deal in order to make the entire oil industry nervous, send prices up. Can they actually stop all shipping through the straits? Well, the fact that now there are more American and British and other countries sending in naval vessels into the strait to protect the shipping gives all of these oil tankers a certain amount of protection. But if oil companies and the companies that own those tankers decide that they don't want to take the risk, then Iran doesn't really have to do a great deal. All they have to do is convey a threat that they're going to do things like this, which is pick up civilian tankers, sometimes tankers that have got nothing to do with Iran's conflict with the West. And that'll be enough. You don't have to physically shut the straits as long as you frighten tanker companies and oil companies into stopping the use of the strait.
To your point, Western powers like the United States have ramped up resources in that region. And when you consider the number of U.S. bases surrounding Iran, how much leverage does the U.S. have to put pressure on Iran beyond the crippling sanctions that are already in place?
Well, the U.S. sanctions, as you point out, have already reached a sort of stage where there's only incremental pain that you can inflict on the Iranians. The British, as I learned this morning, are thinking about applying sanctions of their own. Other European countries, Germany, France, the European Union, are thinking about applying their own sanctions. But we are getting to a stage when the impact of these sanctions is already so substantial that there's not a whole lot more that can be done to add to it. So that part of the pressure on Iran is beginning to run. I mean, we don't have that many more options left.
All right, Bobby Ghosh, we appreciate your time and perspective today. We'll stay in touch with you. Thank you.